Hello, and welcome to Handled-ish, Productivity for the Imperfect, a weekly podcast for those who want to elevate their productivity but are not looking for perfection. I'm your host, Betsy Hayes, and I'm so glad you're joining me from Podcast Land or on YouTube. This is episode 18, Winning at Delegation. First of all, I want to talk about why delegating is so hard because philosophically, right, it sounds pretty great. You have something that needs to be done, there's someone who potentially can help you with it. Why are we then not taking advantage of that? Couple of things that I was thinking about are, reasons why that delegating can be hard is, sometimes we've been burned before, right? We delegated something and someone flaked out or did it wrong or didn't do it well enough. So we had to redo it. Or because they didn't do it, we had to do it anyway. But then there was a time crunch and all these not so fun things. Sometimes it's hard to delegate because we don't want people to think that we can't handle what we've been asked to do. Sometimes, and this totally is silly when you say it out loud, but I've experienced it, so I believe it's true. And sometimes we're too busy to delegate, which again is kind of a little counterintuitive, but it's true because delegation does take time. Sometimes we don't have time to wait for other people to do their part because perhaps the timeline is squishy, either because it is or because we made it that way. Sometimes it's hard because maybe we don't trust someone to do it the way it needs to be done or the way that we would do it. More on that in a moment. So it makes sense that delegating is hard. All of those reasons are completely, valid in different ways. However, I'd like to offer a thought that perhaps we should delegate anyway, and maybe we need to delegate more. And there's a few reasons for that, and I want to share those with you now. So, one, altruistic, socially affirming, inspirational view of delegating could be that when you delegate, you give people the chance to shine. You give people the chance to learn. You give people the chance to grow. And this can be children, this can be colleagues, this can be any manner of humans in your life. When you do, give someone a chance to participate and be a part of something and accomplish things, that's really positive for them. And that's a wonderful thing. And as a result, of course, it can be positive for us because we've created an environment for that to happen. From our perspective, we can get more time if we choose to delegate. And again, fully recognize that doesn't always happen. But when we're delegating well and when things are working, it can free up time for us to do other things. In a workplace setting or actually even in a family, um, delegating provides cross-training opportunities. So for when we're on vacation or we're sick or we change jobs or get promoted or are not doing the things that we're in charge of anymore, at least there's some other humans who have a little bit of an idea about the scope of what's going on, maybe what it takes, can, having done components of it, maybe they could take on additional things. So that is another reason why we might want to consider doing more delegating. So in order to be handled-ish in our delegation space, I wanted to share some thoughts that have worked for me. And of course, then I would really, really love to hear from you about how you effectively delegate, how you win at delegation. So being specific is the most important thing. You want to make sure that when you ask someone to do something or, assign a task to someone else, that you are as specific as humanly possible. And that is in all of the details. So we want to make sure that we have, if there are numbers attached, right? If there are minimums, if there are maximums, I would like you to explore some venues for our event, for example, is a non-specific piece of delegation. Instead, you could say something like, I'd like you to explore venues for our event. This is the, amount of people we need to hold. These are our parking requirements. This is sort of the part of town or the town that we want to be in. I'd like you to provide me with 3 to 4 options, and our price range is X, right? So the more details you give the person to explore the venues, the better their list is going to be when they bring it back to us. So what are the myriad of details that you can provide this person so they can give you information that is actually helpful? If you are, talking to a family member and trying to figure out where to eat, right? Hey, give me 3 options, within 20 minutes of where we are, with a price range, approximately this. And then we can talk about where to eat. So the more people know what's inside our brains, the better off they are at accomplishing the task and doing it well. We also need to have a conversation about our expectations regarding the quality. There are times when things need to be spectacular, right? All the T's need to be crossed, the I's need to be dotted. It needs to be beautiful. It needs to be, succinct or this length or whatever. But there is a very specific level of quality that we're looking for, and sometimes that level of quality is not as high that we are expecting. Sometimes it's, hey, just throw a couple of ideas together about this, and this, and then we'll go from there. Or, what, I really need this to be in a detailed presentation. I will need a slide on each of these specific things. Um, it needs to be client ready. So these are some of the words that I use when I'm talking to my students. Sometimes my level of quality expectation is it needs to be ready for the client, right? It needs to be so wonderful that you think it's ready to be seen by the person that you're doing it for. Sometimes I will share with them that I just need a very, very low key draft. I just need something to throw darts at. I just need something to see where your head is at with this particular thing, and then we can go from there. And then obviously there's a lot of spots in between both of those things, but really give a level of expectation regarding quality. Are these raw notes? Are these put in, a narrative form? Is this a bulleted list? Does it need to be formatted, or is it just the words and the concepts that we need? But really think about that level of quality and make sure that the person you're delegating to is aware of that quality. Uh, Corollary to that is the discussion of what a success looks like. Let me start again. What success looks like. So, as a young professional, sometimes I would be a little bit overwhelmed by the amount of things on my to-do list, and I realized that I did some things, I overdid some things and underdid some things because I didn't ask follow-up questions regarding what success should look like. So, if you are delegating, be very clear on what success looks like with this particular thing. And if you are being delegated to and you do not know what success looks like in this particular thing, it's really up to you to ask that question. You can say things like, what would a successful outcome look like for you? Or if you were me, how would you tackle this project? Or what would be the steps that you would take to make this happen? So ask these questions, and sometimes it can provide a lot more clarity. I realized that in the idea of letting people grow and thrive and shine through delegation, sometimes you don't want to outline the steps, and that's okay. And that means you have to have a really specific end game vision. And then part of the learning is they can figure out how they can get there. So that's a good way to do it too. You can say something like, I'm not going to tell you how to do this. However, here's what we need at the end. And I'm really excited to see what you come up with. And I also really want to hear about your process, because both of those things can be really, really learning moments. Sometimes our processes are awesome, and we can learn from someone else's steps that they take. And sometimes we can see things that maybe they could have done differently or made life easier for themselves if they would have done a few of those steps differently. So a lot of learning and growth can happen in that conversation. Perhaps, I don't know, this is all important, but I feel this is so important, is we need to have concrete, appropriate, achievable deadlines. And whenever we give deadlines, I am a huge advocate of both, you know, time, day of the week, and date, providing all of that information so there's no confusion. And part of this comes from our, 24/7 world now. We used to be able to say, I need something at the end of the day, and that for the most part meant around 5 o'clock. Now, if you tell someone you need something by the end of the day, they might not know what that means. Does that mean the end of your day? Does that mean the end of their day? Does that mean literally 11:59 p.m. when one day turns into the next? What time are we talking about? And the reason I also advocate the day and the date is because sometimes we make mistakes, right? So we can say, I need something by 10 a.m. on, May 30th. And, but we might actually not know that that is not the date that we are thinking of. We're actually thinking of the day before or whatever. But you want to say, I need it by 10 a.m. May 30th. Excuse me, 10 a.m. Thursday, May 30th. So that way, if Thursday and May 30th are not the same, which they are this year, we can have those conversations. Like, do you need it on Thursday or do you need it on May 30th? So think about that. So I actually didn't explain that very well. I'm going to go back to that. Let's just say I said that I need something by 10 a.m. Thursday, May 31st, which in 2024 is not the same. And so then someone could circle back to me and go, hey, do you need it by 10 a.m. on Thursday, or do you need it by 10 a.m. May 31st? Because those are two different things. And then we can have that dialogue so they can know exactly what day the deadline is. I hope that second round makes a little bit more sense. When we're picking our deadlines, we want to be kind both to the people we are delegating to and also to ourselves. So usually delegation is someone doing a piece of something that fits into the larger project that you're doing. And if that's the case, you want to make sure that you give them enough time to be successful, but that you also give yourself enough time to be successful once you receive that piece of information. So you don't want to make it so squishy for you that you are stressed out. And you also don't want to make it so squishy for them that they're not able to do what they need to do, which is why delegation does take planning. It does take time. And when we make things too squishy, that's often why we are not able to delegate, because it's just not fair to ask someone to do something in that squishy of a time frame. So think about, when you're doing your projects, one of the first things that I do is I think about, okay, what are the things I need from other humans? And I get those requests out right away, even if I'm not even ready to work on that particular project. So that way I have whatever I need from them well before I need to finish that particular thing. So give people an appropriate non-squishy amount of time. And I know that sounds a little bit vague because that's going to depend, right? Sometimes that will be 4 hours. Sometimes that will be 4 days. Sometimes that will be 4 weeks. It just depends on the nature and the scope of what you're asking them to do. So concrete, appropriate, and achievable deadlines. And another thing that we need to include in this beautiful, effective delegation is this idea of an accountability measure. So, how will you know that they did it? And sometimes this is obvious because they need to report back to you, but sometimes maybe you're not the end game. and someone needs to do something and then it goes on to someone else, and maybe you're not always in the loop. And so building in that accountability measure, make sure you CC me when you submit this, or I'd like to see a draft before it goes in, or, please circle back and let me know how this went, or those sorts of things to make sure that you know that the thing actually happened. And then we need to have a circle back mechanism if you don't hear when you were supposed to about the thing being done. That's when, one of my favorite ways to do this is with my pending email folder. So all of my open loops, when I'm asking people to do things, they haven't yet, I put that request in my pending folder, my pending email folder, and then once or twice a week, I will go through that and nudge folks if I haven't heard or if things haven't been done. And sometimes, they're done, but the person just hasn't circled back and told you yet. That's obviously not amazing, but it's not horrible. And then the loop is closed. Sometimes people, acknowledge that they need the nudge, and they are grateful that you didn't let them fall through the cracks. Uh, this is sort of, again, about making sure that we are setting everyone up for success, both the people in our lives and ourselves. We don't want to go, well, I'm just going to wait until they've missed the deadline and then I'll circle back. No, nudge if you haven't heard anything, and encourage people to be able to do what they've been asked to do. And that will not only get things done, that will also continue to build your relationships. And when delegation doesn't work, I encourage you to take the time to find out why. Instead of writing off the person and saying, I'm never going to give them anything to do again, or I'm going to work with, so and so instead. Drill down, say, hey, why did this not get done? Did you not have the tools that you need? Did you not have the knowledge or skills that you need? Did you not understand the task? And if there's those things, encourage and empower them to be confident enough to ask those questions and say, yeah, you know what, I don't know really what to do. I'm confused. I thought I knew, but once I got into it, I didn't. So that's why I didn't move forward. Help them, figure out how to do that differently next time. And if, it's on us and we didn't do a good job articulating the vision, then we can learn from that, and we can do better next time. So there's so much that goes into this idea of delegation. There's, of course, all of the reasons why, we don't want to do it. And then there's many, many reasons why we should. And of course, often we have to, because there are things that, we can't do or don't have time to do, or that, that person is contractually obligated to do, or they work for us and they need to learn how to do this. There's so many reasons why this needs to be a skill, right? This is a skill that we need to develop. And as we discussed, there's a lot of ways to really do this well and set the people in our lives up for success. And then there's the piece about, if it doesn't work well, let's drill down and figure out why. And conversely, of course, if it does work well, let's take a moment to reflect and figure out why it did work well, and rinse and repeat. Make sure that, we use those effective delegation steps next time as well. So a lot that goes into this, and I appreciate you, hopefully sharing what you do to effectively delegate. I'd love to hear what you think. So thank you for joining me today. Let me know what you think of the podcast, about this topic, suggestions, anything else at my website, Betsy A. Hayes. Hayes is HAYS.com. And you know what to do to help keep this podcast going. Please subscribe, share with a friend, and consider rating and reviewing. I very, very much appreciate and value your support. Please tune in next week for the next episode of Handled-ish, Productivity for the Imperfect. Until then, take care and be kind to yourself. You are doing way better than you think you are. Trust me.